At the beginning of 2024, a submarine called Rand vanished at the Dodson platform in West Antarctica after the discovery of a series of unknown structures in the ice. Its whereabouts are still fueling debates. For some, it was considered a premeditated malfunction for missions of that kind. Others believe that what happened with the submarine is just another sign that in Antarctica, nothing is as it seems. In fact, in recent years, Antarctica has gained more relevance in forums dedicated to conspiracies. However, the amazement is not limited to those theories that present it as a huge wall containing the flat Earth, or as a place where a civilization as ancient as it is marvelous would take refuge. This area has managed to become a complete enigma, even for scientists. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. With an average temperature of -20 degrees, more than 14 million square kilometers, and an average population of less than 5,000 inhabitants, Antarctica has captured humanity's attention even long before it was recognized as such. Yes, that's what you're hearing. Before Antarctica became that huge white monster we use as a canvas for our wildest stories, this land was already fertile for early humans seeking to understand their mysteries. How did it become part of? Why do people say there are secret Nazi bases on its land? Was there a war fought there where Americans battled unidentified flying objects? What was Operation Highjump? Why do people say it might be hiding a portal? Interdimensional? What made people consider it the gateway to Hollow Earth? What secret lies in the ecosystem beneath its kilometers of ice? Is it true that in Antarctica there could be the scar left by the deadliest event our world has ever suffered? To answer these and other questions, first let's analyze what we know about this continent, the treaties that currently govern it, and its use in the official calendar. Then, we invite you to descend with us down this iceberg that will take us to the most curious aspects of Antarctica. If you enjoy these specials, you can comment on mysteries, and soon we will release another one, exploring in detail those cases that have fascinated us since time immemorial. Suggest topics for us below. We read your comments. Let's begin. For centuries, Antarctica was not a territory but a suspicion. It wasn't on nautical charts or recognized globally, but it existed in people's minds. The ancient Greeks, fascinated by cosmic symmetry, believed a southern land had to exist to balance the northern masses. They called it Terra Australis Incognita, the unknown southern land. It was a geometric, not geographic invention, an act of faith in universal order, but no one had seen it. During the Middle Ages, when maps were hybrids between the real and the symbolic, the far south was a space for projections. There lived mythological creatures, sea monsters, beasts with eyes of fire, and representatives of the darkest abysses. If anything was clear, it was that no one had ever reached that place, but everyone wanted to imagine it. It was an entry to fantasy and a storehouse for our deepest fears. Antarctica was ultimately the last region on Earth to be discovered, first documented in the southern summer of 1603 by the Spanish navigator Gabriel de Castilla. In 1773, James Cook became the first known European to cross the Antarctic Circle, but he did not get to see the continent. His ships, the Resolution and the Adventure, sailed among icebergs and frozen waters. Cook concluded that if land existed there, it must be inhospitable, useless, and ice-covered. Even so, his report lit a fuse. If there were no riches on the surface, could it be that they were hidden underneath? January 27, 1820 changed history. That day, Fabian Gottlieb von Bellingshausen, a naval officer of the Russian Empire, spotted a landmass covered in ice. He was aboard the Vostok when he spotted what he described as a wall of solid ice. He didn't know it, but he was witnessing the first documented sighting of what we now know as the Antarctic. Just 3 days later, the British Edward Bransfield recorded a similar sighting from his ship. Nathaniel Palmer, an American seal hunter, also reported land that same year. In just 3 weeks, 3 flags were flying over a continent that had been invisible for millennia. But seeing is not conquering. Antarctica remained unreachable. The cold was inhuman, the storms relentless, and the logistics of setting up camps or establishing routes were impractical. Most expeditions of that century didn't return. The ships got trapped in the ice and their crews, if they survived. They told nearly delirious stories. Icebergs the size of mountains, winds that howled as if they were hungry for human lives, and auroras that painted the sky with light. Lights that no one could explain. Despite it all, the myth had fallen. Antarctica was real. With the 20th century came the technical advances that made it possible to do more than just look from a distance. In 1911, the Norwegian explorer Roald Amundsen became the first human being to reach the South Pole, beating the British Robert Falcon Scott by weeks, whose expedition ended in tragedy. The Norwegian victory and British loss drew global attention. Antarctica was no longer just ice. It had become the stage for epics worthy of adventure books. Scientific research also began to draw a more precise map of the continent. It was discovered that beneath the glaciers, which cover 98% of the surface, there is a complex network of mountains, lakes, and geological systems, which look nothing like the white desert seen from above. The Transantarctic Mountains, a mountain range over 3,500 kilometers long, split the continent into West Antarctica and East Antarctica. Fossil evidence found in rocks there revealed that more than 200 million years ago, Antarctica was part of the supercontinent Gondwana and had a temperate climate with forests and diverse animal life. In other words, the Antarctica we know today is just the frozen shell of an ancient and forgotten world. This made it coveted by many. In a reality where every inch of the map has been claimed, divided, and defended with fire, this continent still belonged to no one. However, just because it has no owner doesn't mean it's free from desire. Throughout the 20th century, when the frozen continent stopped being just a scientific curiosity and became a space for political projection, the great powers began to look at it differently. Beneath the largest ice surface, there is more hidden than just glaciers. Oil, rare minerals, and immeasurable amounts of fresh water. And a strategic location that, during the Cold War, made it a key piece on the global chessboard. It was then that one of the most unusual agreements in modern history was made. The year 1959. The world was living under the constant tension of a latent confrontation between two irreconcilable blocs, the United States and the Soviet Union. The arms race, ideological expansion, and fight for geographic influence threatened to spark global conflict. In that context, and against all odds, 12 countries, some of them at odds with each other, reached a historic agreement to preserve Antarctica as a continent for peace and science. The Antarctic Treaty was signed on December 1, 1959, and took effect on June 23, 1961. The original signatories were Argentina, Australia, Belgium, Chile, France, Japan, New Zealand, Norway, South Africa, the United Kingdom, the United States, and the Soviet Union. The agreement's pillars were clear. Antarctica is only for peaceful use. The establishment of military bases, nuclear weapons testing, and radioactive waste disposal were prohibited. Additionally, scientific research freedom and international cooperation were guaranteed. Finally, the treaty states that no existing territorial claim is recognized or rejected, but no new claims can be made either. Thus, Antarctica became the sole continent not under national control. Even so, the treaty did not erase territorial interests. 9 countries have made sovereignty claims over different sectors of the continent, some of which overlap with each other. For example, the claims of Argentina, Chile, and the United Kingdom partially overlap, creating a complex diplomatic situation, but one that is frozen by the agreement. Those claims are based, in many cases, on geographical, historical, or even proximity criteria. Argentina, for example, has maintained an uninterrupted presence on the continent since 1904 with the Orcadas base. Chile has encouraged families to move to its Presidente Eduardo Frei base to strengthen its presence. The United Kingdom bases its claim on past expeditions and colonial heritage. The treaty allows these claims to exist as a sort of document on hold, but prevents any concrete action to enforce them. Thus, Antarctica becomes a space of contained dispute. One of the most striking aspects of the Antarctic regime is its apparent scientific neutrality. The treaty signatories' bases operate under the guise of research and often make valuable discoveries in climatology, astronomy, geology, glaciology, and extremophile biology. But that facade of scientific cooperation coexists with another reality. The permanent presence on the continent also serves as a diplomatic tool. Countries with continuous activity in Antarctica gain consultative status under the treaty, giving them voting power on future decisions. Put simply, more research gives you more power. Behind the laboratories and research stations, there is infrastructure, state investment, and geopolitical strategy. Some bases function as small enclaves of symbolic sovereignty. Flags are flown there, stamps and postcards are issued, national holidays are celebrated, and a stable, though minimal population is maintained. For example, Argentina's Esperanza base was where the first human was born in Antarctica, on January 7, 1978. Emilio Marcos de Espalma was born in that frozen land. It wasn't a coincidence. The birth was a state policy to strengthen the territorial claim. But this is part of modern history. The territory, before the treaty, had already been the subject of controversy and was highly coveted by the Nazis, giving rise to one of the most fantastic stories on record. In the late 1930s, as Europe trembled under the Third Reich's advance, a distant echo rose from the planet's most desolate corner. It didn't come from the west, east, or north, but from the deep south, Antarctica, the last unexplored part of Earth. And in the midst of its political, economic, and territorial expansion, Nazi Germany set its sights on the White Continent. What for others was a desert of ice, for Hitler and his inner circle was a new frontier to conquer. This is how one of the strangest and later most manipulated episodes in polar history was born: the Nazi expedition to Neuschwanland. In December 1938, the ship Schwabenland set sail from the port of Hamburg, carrying more than 80 crew members, scientists, military cartographers, and 2 Dornier-Wall seaplanes, which would be essential for the mission. The expedition, officially led by Captain Alfred Richter, aimed to explore a portion of the Antarctic continent that had not yet been explored and to claim it for the Reich. The mission had strong support from the Ministry of Food and Agriculture, and one of its stated purposes was to find suitable places for fishing and whaling. At a time when Germany was seeking self-sufficiency and to reduce its dependence on imports, however, other more strategic and less explicit objectives also seemed to be at play. During their stay in Antarctica, the seaplanes made more than 15 flights and took over 11,000 aerial photographs of the area. Pilots dropped metal flags with swastikas from the air to mark the territory as German property. They named the region New Swabia, in honor of the region of Swabia and the ship that had brought them there. Despite the magnitude of the expedition, there is no evidence that a permanent base was established. No significant infrastructure was built, nor was any personnel left on the continent. The Schwabenland returned to Germany in April 1939, just a few months after the outbreak of World War II. Up to this point, these are the verifiable historical facts. After the war, as the Third Reich fell and many Nazi leaders escaped, the myth began. It began to be speculated that some high-ranking officials of the regime, including SS scientists and members of the esoteric Thule Circle, had returned to Antarctica to build a secret base hidden under the ice. That facility would become known in conspiracy circles as Base 211. According to this theory, the Nazis would have moved advanced technology, including prototypes of weapons and flying objects, into the interior of subglacial mountains. Some even claim that they found access to natural tunnels that led them to an inner world. This would have a direct connection with the Hollow Earth theory, which we will explore shortly. These ideas were spread by authors like Ernest Sandel, who in the 1970s published pseudo-historical materials that mixed Nazism, occultism, UFOs, and science fiction. He was the one who introduced into the popular imagination the notion of Nazi UFOs developed in hidden laboratories in Antarctica. From there, the myth grew like an uncontrollable creature. It was said that the Nazis had perfected anti-gravity technology. And even that, Hitler didn't die in Berlin, but escaped in a submarine to an underground city built beneath the ice. These theories lack verifiable evidence. There are no documents, infrastructure remains, photographs, or credible testimonies to support them. But, as with myths, their power comes not from truth, but from their ability to endure. One of the most spectacular aspects are the rumors that followed afterwards. Rumors that spoke of secret battles between Allied forces and supposed German air defenses at the South Pole. On September 2nd, 1945, Japan signed its unconditional surrender, bringing an end to World War II. The entire planet was exhausted, the powers were devastated, but at the same time, the American military machine had reached a capacity never seen before. In this climate of reconstruction and geopolitical realignment, attention turned to little explored territories, the Arctic, the oceans, and of course the mysterious and icy Antarctica. In this scenario, Operation Highjump was born, officially called the United States Navy Antarctic Development Program, in 1946. Although its official objectives were to train personnel, test equipment in extreme conditions, and consolidate the United States' presence in the region, the enormous size of the expedition aroused suspicion almost from the very beginning. The Haiyang operation was led by Rear Admiral Richard E. Byrd, a veteran polar explorer who had already commanded missions to inhospitable areas in previous decades. However, this operation was unprecedented, involving over 4,700 United States Navy personnel, 13 warships including aircraft carriers, destroyers, and support vessels, and 33 aircraft including planes and helicopters. It was essentially a small army mobilized toward the White Continent. Clearly, the operation's scale was unnecessary for basic scientific tasks. Some speculated it was a show of force against the Soviet Union early in the Cold War for geopolitical reasons, or even to investigate reports of the already mentioned secret facilities that the Nazis had built in Antarctica during the war. The convoy departed from the port of Norfolk, Virginia on August 26, 1946. And after a journey that crossed the Panama Canal and resupplied at South American ports, it reached the icy southern waters. Byrd split the deployment into 3 groups. The West group would focus on aerial reconnaissance and mapping, the East group on exploring coastal areas, and the Central group would be the logistical and command corps. The operation centered on the United States ship Philippine Sea, which launched aircraft from its deck for aerial mapping of large areas. In just a few months, the operation managed to map thousands of kilometers of Antarctic coastline and document extreme meteorological and geographical conditions. However, it was not without tragedy. On December 30, 1946, an air accident in the Ross Sea killed 3 crew members. Relentless weather with hurricane-force winds and sub-zero temperatures damaged equipment and led to the cancellation. More striking was that, despite being planned to last a bit longer, the mission ended abruptly in February 1947, just 6 months after setting sail. The Navy explained that it was due to adverse weather conditions and the achievement of objectives. But that explanation never truly convinced the most curious. Upon his return, Admiral Byrd gave interviews that fueled speculation. In particular, on March 5, 1947, the plane traveled over the Ross Sea. The plane crossed the Ross Sea in 1937. He traveled in the Ross Sea. The plane traveled over the Ross Sea. He traveled in the Ross Sea in 1937. He traveled in the sea in the year 1937. Earth became fertile ground for all kinds of hypotheses. Some remained within the realm of the plausible, while others ventured into the extraordinary, such as alleged encounters with unknown technology and flying ships. Did Byrd and his team face resistance? Did they discover that there really were secret bases there? Liza, plain and simple, did the United States fight against Nazi UFOs in Antarctica? Was the entire operation designed to annihilate the last stronghold of the Third Reich? Regardless of whether you want to consider this conspiracy theory or not, the truth is that the connection between Antarctica and flying saucers seems truly deep. Subscribe. Antarctica is not only one of the most remote and unexplored places on the planet, but also one of the most shrouded in mysteries. Decades, this immense white desert has been the focus of countless theories pointing to the existence of extraterrestrial technology, unidentified aerial phenomena, and hidden bases. Under the eternal ice, unidentified flying object sightings in the region are not new, but they have gained particular strength due to an explosive combination: geographic isolation, military secrecy, and the few witnesses who dare to speak out. Although official records are scarce and often silenced or discredited, there are multidimensional ones. Multiple reports of unidentified flying objects flying over the white continent. Pilots on scientific missions, researchers from international bases, military personnel, and even satellites have reported anomalies that to this day have no explanation. 1. A disturbing story from the 1960s recounts British scientists at Halley Base claiming to see a triangular formation of orange lights, moving silently. The report was classified as an optical phenomenon, although the witnesses never accepted that explanation. Years later, in 1985, American engineer Ronald W. Bell joined a joint mission at the Atmos-Scott base, as he revealed in an interview. Years later, he saw a disc-shaped craft descend several kilometers from the base during a snowstorm. He said military personnel arrived within hours after the event and confiscated all information. In 2001, a team of Russian researchers also reportedly observed erratic lights in the Antarctic night sky. The descriptions noted sudden movements, silence, and direction changes impossible for human-made devices. There were no photographs, only testimonies. Satellite images have played a role in fueling the theories. In 2012, an analysis of Google Earth revealed a strange semi-buried circular structure in the Antarctic ice in a region near Queen Maud Land. The dimensions and symmetry of the object raised suspicions that it could be a hidden craft, although official explanations pointed to natural geological formations. A more controversial case involved coordinates that, when entered into Google Earth, revealed a metallic object with polished edges and an aerodynamic shape protruding from the ice. Or so some say. Days later, the image was blurred by Google, which only increased suspicion of a cover-up. In recent decades, the number of satellites and drones monitoring the continent has grown exponentially. However, hard data remains scarce. Space agencies, both public and private, rarely make records of anomalies in that part of the planet public. Antarctica, they are even systematically censored in satellite images. The big question is why? Occult theorists claim that there is a tacit alliance between governments and corporations to keep what really happens there a secret. There are rumors of unknown propulsion, underground civilizations, and restricted areas where UFOs are frequently seen. Others, on the other hand, point out that the highly unstable Antarctic magnetic field could be related to interdimensional portals, or with areas where the laws of physics, as we know them, behave differently. In 2006, Russia released the controversial audiovisual production Third Reich, Operation Unidentified Flying Object. With a historical documentary style, the work gathered testimonies from Russian military personnel and historians to present a thesis that, although based on already known facts, dared to go much further. The documentary assumed the United States fought the Nazis in 1947, and it was stated that the last two surviving German submarines at that time were later found in a bay in Buenos Aires, Argentina. But that wasn't all. According to the interviewees, the Nazis allegedly tried to communicate with extraterrestrial entities through telepathic contact. The supposed channelings carried out by mediums allegedly provided key information to one man in particular. Victor Schauberger, the German scientist whom the documentary places in a category almost parallel to that of Nikola Tesla. With that information, Schauberger is said to have managed to develop flying saucers with which the Nazis intended to change the course of the war. But the Allied attack was imminent, and the documentary claims that the decision was to evacuate those ships to a secret refuge in the southern lands. The production saved one of its most extraordinary claims for the end. According to its creators, the reason for the controversial ARP operating in Alaska would be to monitor a space-time portal hidden inside the Earth. Is it to allow interstellar travel through wormholes? The most radical hypothesis in that entire documentary is that the North Pole would be the exit door and the South Pole the entrance to that cosmic tunnel, an invisible shortcut passing through the planet's core to connect with the star Vega. As we said, in documented reality, there is no official evidence that Operation Highjump found anything beyond ice, rocks, polar wildlife, and extreme conditions. However, the aura of mystery never completely disappeared. In later years, these ideas mixed with theories not only about UFOs, secret bases, and wormholes, but also about underground civilizations. La Tierra La. At the intersection between science, speculation, and boundless imagination, there is a theory that has persisted for centuries, resisting the advance of knowledge and challenging the boundaries of rational thought: the Hollow Earth theory. And although this idea has been widely discredited by modern science, its presence persists strongly, especially when it is linked to a place that, by itself, arouses suspicion, secrets, and prolonged silences. Earth. Could the Earth be hollow? It's not a modern invention. In fact, its roots go back to ancient mythologies and cosmogonies. From the underground worlds of the Nordic and Mesoamerican peoples to the Buddhist legends about the hidden city of Shambhala. However, the modern formulation of the concept appeared in 1692 thanks to the British astronomer Edmund Halley. Yes, the same one as the comet, who, based on anomalies in measurements of the Earth's magnetic field, proposed that our planet was made up of several concentric layers, each rotating independently and with its own luminous atmosphere inside. Although the scientific community quickly refuted the theory, the idea that there could be an unknown world beneath our feet, perhaps even inhabited, took hold strongly in the collective imagination. Throughout the 19th century and the early 20th century, novels, pseudosciences, and failed explorations began to intertwine this idea with a new, exotic, and little understood setting: the Antarctica 1, a key point of the Earth theory. Hollow Earth theory claims that there are huge openings at the poles, one in the Arctic and another in Antarctica, which would serve as gateways to the underground world. Some old maps, distorted by cartographic errors or perhaps by darker intentions, show strange hollows in the polar regions. But it was in the 20th century when this narrative took on a much more bizarre dimension. Much of this perception comes from interpretations surrounding someone we've already introduced, Admiral Richard E. Byrd himself. Many conspiracy theorists say Byrd encountered beings from an underground world. This is described in supposed diaries that are considered apocryphal by the more skeptical. Phrases like "the South Pole is actually an entrance to a new world" are reportedly mentioned there. Italian writer F. Amadeo Giannini was the first to mention these disputed and controversial diaries. 1957. In his book, Worlds Beyond the Poles, he explained how the United States government had threatened Byrd so that he wouldn't reveal anything about what he had really witnessed. These writings have no documentary support or scientific validation, but that hasn't stopped them from being repeated in hundreds of books and internet forums. Byrd allegedly flew into the Earth's interior via an ice opening according to these texts. He discovered a warm ecosystem, mammoths, and civilizations with advanced technology, unimaginable for humans on the surface. Linked to these theories, mystical names like Agartha and Shambhala emerge. It is said that these are sacred cities hidden deep within the planet, ruled by immortal sages known as the Ascended Masters or the Kings of the World. In some accounts, it is these entities who dictate the evolutionary rules of humanity, intervening only when civilization is on the brink of Antarctica. Because of its extreme isolation, hostile environment, and near total inaccessibility, it thus became the ideal focal point for these modern legends. The idea that Agartha's entrance could be hidden there made the already mysterious continent even more intriguing. Seismic measurements, which allow us to study the internal structure of the planet through the behavior of seismic waves, show that the Earth's interior is made up of solid and liquid seismic layers. Crust mantle, liquid outer core, solid inner core. There is no space for a hollow world beneath us. Satellite images and polar flights have also not detected any geological anomaly that could be interpreted as an opening or portal. The polar regions are difficult to fly over due to weather, logistical, and political reasons, but they are not out of reach. Even so, the persistence of these theories is often supported by most studies, the Earth itself shape. Most of the studies of the most the same studies, Earth shape, most. The most unsettling thing about all this is that beyond the truth or falsehood of the hollow Earth theory, Antarctica continues to serve as a screen onto which we project our fears, hidden aspirations, and longing for mystery. What lies beneath the ice? What is beyond what the maps show? What secrets does that polar silence conceal? Although science categorically denies these theories, it has also admitted that in some way it is true that beneath the Antarctic ice there could exist a world unimaginable to us. Deep within the coldest, most isolated and inhospitable continent on the planet lies one of Earth's best-kept secrets, Lake Vostok. It appears to be just another white patch in Antarctica, but beneath 4,000 meters of ice is an ecosystem entirely isolated from the outside world. A body of fresh water roughly the size of Lake Ontario, which has never seen sunlight nor been altered by human contact. Until recently. Lake Vostok was discovered in the 1990s thanks to the use of ice-penetrating radar. Technology enabled scientists to see subglacial structures without drilling. At first, no one could believe it. A liquid lake beneath the Antarctic ice, fed by geothermal heat from the Earth's subsurface. It wasn't a small puddle, but a vast body of water over 250 kilometers long and 50 kilometers wide. Its existence would offer a possibility of respite. What kind of primitive life form, perhaps even unknown, could have survived down there, in complete isolation for millions of years? But this scientific hope was quickly cloaked in mystery. For years, drilling into the lake was the subject of intense international debate. The scientific community feared contaminating the unique ecosystem with foreign materials. However, the Russian researchers slowly advanced in their mission. In 2012, the team from the Vostok Antarctic Station announced that they had finally reached the waters of the lake. The drilling, according to the Russians, was carried out with extreme care. Even so, what happened next only increased the doubts. As soon as the first samples were taken, the Russian authorities imposed strict secrecy. The scientific publications took a long time to appear, and when they did, they turned out to be scarce and ambiguous. In 2013, a year after lake contact, the scientists claimed to have found a strange, unknown form of bacteria, one that didn't match any other organism catalogued on Earth. Then, very conveniently, they retracted their statement. The sample had been contaminated, they said, and the discovery was not valid. For many, this was the beginning of a deeper suspicion. What had they really found down there? Lake Vostok is not just the largest of more than 400 subglacial Antarctic lakes, it's also the most inaccessible, most mysterious, and by some theories, could be hiding the most secrets. It's often considered a kind of natural laboratory for studying conditions similar to those on Jupiter's or Saturn's icy moons. If there's life in Vostok, could there be life on other worlds? That was the dream of astrobiologists, to confirm these ideas. However, darker voices started to emerge. Some conspiracy theorists claim that Lake Vostok hides artificial structures, ruins of a pre-human civilization, or alien technology buried beneath the ice sheet. Vostok Station, named after the lake, still operates in extreme conditions, with temperatures that can reach 89 degrees below zero, the lowest ever recorded on Earth. There, a small group of scientists stays every winter, conducting research amid ice storms and nights that last for months. But little to nothing has been clearly said about the discoveries beneath the lake. Is there life in Lake Vostok? Did millions of years of isolation allow the evolution of organisms completely different from anything we know? Could Antarctic ecosystems hold even older secrets related to lost civilizations or experiments? Silenced, the questions keep lingering and sometimes intensify, considering Antarctica also contains the world's deepest natural spot. once again. In the heart of East Antarctica lies the Denman Glacier, a wide river of ice more than 70 miles long and about 10 miles wide. What appears to be pure ice and stillness conceals a deadly trap. It is the deepest land canyon on the planet, submerged beneath the frozen mantle up to 3,500 meters below sea level. For decades, East Antarctica was seen as a stable fortress against climate change until Denman began to show the world a different view. Between 1996 and 2018, its grounding line, which is the boundary where the ice rests on land before extending into the sea, retreated 5.4 kilometers. That retreat is not symmetrical. To the east, an underground hill still supports it, but to the west, it collapses over a bed sloping inward. A retrograde slope that would make it easier for warm ocean water to melt the ice from below. If that process goes too far, it could trigger an irreversible retreat. Even more unsettling, Denman's ice is melting at record levels. Researchers from SE0 reported that it loses about 70.8 billion tons of ice per year, a level that puts it among the fastest in the continent. Every fragment of ice that gives way, every underground channel where warm water enters, predicts an irreversible climate transformation. The retreat of the Denman Glacier is not just a remote phenomenon, it's an urgent invitation to rethink the world's vulnerability. If the glacier were to melt completely, the planet would face a sea level rise of 1.5 meters, a figure capable of redrawing our coastlines. On the other hand, beyond its melting, the fact that Denman has a canyon that goes so deep into the earth, it sparks the imagination, giving rise to countless theories. Some have even called it a gateway to hell itself. Could it be that the exact point where civilization and the modern world as we know it will begin to collapse is in Antarctica? It wouldn't be surprising if we consider that many believe one of the greatest cataclysms on the planet started right there. In Antarctica's vast, frozen landscape, another major geological mystery remains hidden. The supposed Wilkes Lane crater is a massive formation buried under kilometers of ice, unseen by the naked eye, but its existence has inspired theories from strict science to unsettling speculation. The story of this mystery begins in 2006 when a team of American scientists, led by geophysicist Ralph von Friese, detected a gigantic gravitational anomaly beneath the ice of East Antarctica. Using satellite data, they observed a gravitational disturbance about 300 kilometers wide. This indicated the presence of a dense mass buried beneath the ice of Wilkes Land, a region known for its extreme isolation. What caught the researchers' attention was not only the intensity of this anomaly, but also its circular shape and its similarity to other structures recognized as impact craters on the Earth's surface. For the experts, this was a clear indication that something enormous had collided with the Earth at that time. Millions of years ago, the idea was not far-fetched. It was suggested that this could be the crater left by an asteroid at least 50 kilometers in diameter, which would have impacted about 250 million years ago. Coinciding suggestively with the Permian-Triassic mass extinction, the deadliest event in the planet's history that wiped out more than 90% of marine species and 70% of terrestrial species. The inevitable comparison was with the famous Chicxulub crater on the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, responsible for the extinction of the dinosaurs. But the one in Wilkes Land would be larger. It is estimated that the impact could have released energy 1,000,000 times greater than the Hiroshima bomb. If confirmed as an impact crater, the one in Wilkes Land would not only be the largest ever found on Earth, but also the one that most dramatically changed the course of planetary evolution. Unlike Chicxulub, this possible crater is buried under over 1,600 meters of solid ice. It can't be seen with the naked eye or easily excavated. Direct evidence is almost impossible. Confirmations have only come through indirect studies, satellite analysis, geophysical mapping, and ice-penetrating radar images. Everything points to there being a dense circular structure there, and solid. In short, the difficulty of accessing that region keeps the mystery alive. What is clear is that beneath the ice of Wilkes Land lies a secret of planetary proportions, one that perhaps has not yet said its last word. But Antarctica doesn't just have hidden lakes, enormous craters, and gigantic canyons. For a long time, it was believed that it also had pyramids. In the frozen vastness of the White Continent, where glaciers merge with the polar skies, an image emerged years ago that captured the collective imagination. A solitary mountain that, when seen from above, seemed to have been precisely carved by human hands. 4 sloping sides, a symmetrical summit, and a shape that instantly evoked ancient pyramids. The setting? The Ellsworth Mountains, the highest mountain range in Antarctica. This formation, located in the Heritage Ranch, started going viral around 2016 when images captured by Google Earth were widely shared. The structure, visible over about 2 square kilometers and with a height close to 4,150 feet, immediately led many to wonder if it could be an ancient construction buried under the ice. But the scientific community quickly cooled down the excitement. Experts such as Eric Reinholt, Earth System Sciences professor at the University of California and National Aeronautics and Space Administration scientist, say that pyramidal shape isn't man-made. Geologists explain that this silhouette is actually a horn or pyramidal peak, a natural formation created by the erosive action of multiple glaciers that wear down the sides of a mountain from different angles, forming a summit with several faces and sharp edges. For his part, geologist Mitch Darcy from the German Center for Geosciences pointed out that although this mountain has an unusual shape, its origin is not extraordinary. It's a nunatak, a rocky peak rising above the polar ice. Satellite technology has been key to clarifying this and other mysteries of Antarctic geography. Radar, synthetic aperture radar, and high-resolution image analysis let us study these elevations' shapes in detail from space, confirming their geological nature with no evidence of ancient civilization structures. Sensationalist media and some television productions took advantage of the site's visual appeal to fuel baseless theories. Could it be that nothing is as it seems and we're doomed for the powerful to lie to us endlessly? Despite progress, something in Antarctica still resists. Each expedition is a victory over the unknown and a reminder of how much we still don't know. There are completely unexplored areas and hundreds of square kilometers covered in ice for millions of years. The weather conditions, the isolation, and the astronomical costs of each mission mean that even today in the satellite era, Antarctica remains unreachable. The formation of the continent was a process, not an event. It was seen, explored, crossed, mapped, and symbolically divided among nations. But who can say that we really know it? Every time an ice floe breaks or a surface layer melts, fossil remains, unexpected geological formations, and microorganisms that survive in extreme conditions appear. Antarctica seems to play with human curiosity, giving us loose pieces of a puzzle whose final image we don't know. The Antarctic Treaty has a review date, although it does not set an explicit expiration. The 1991 Madrid Protocol, which strengthens the environmental protection of the region and prohibits mining activity, is subject to review. The year 2048, though distant, is already sparking speculation. What will happen when the diplomatic ice melts? The economic interests in Antarctica have not disappeared. Beneath its white mantle, there may be vast reserves of oil, natural gas, coal, and strategic minerals. It also holds about 70% of the planet's fresh water frozen in its glaciers. With climate change accelerating the melting of the ice sheets, the hidden resources are becoming more accessible and therefore more coveted. In the not-so-distant future, the temptation to break the consensus for economic gain could spark new tensions. Although the White Continent is a model of international scientific cooperation today, history shows that no resource stays untouchable forever. Today, Antarctica remains the least inhabited, least polluted, and least intervened place on the planet. A silent wasteland where each step creaks as if waking something asleep. What started as a map legend is now a real presence, challenging the limits of our understanding. What's there? Out there? Was it really the scene of hidden wars? Is it the gateway to the most amazing of secrets? Will we ever know? The most likely and terrible thing is that we won't, and if those ice sheets ever cease to exist, it's because our time will already be over.